So, if you guys have not heard, EA has lost exclusivity on Star Wars video games. And if you're like me or like Brent, you guys grew up on the like renaissance of Star Wars video games. Because I grew up with KOTOR, Night of the Old Republic, and Star Wars Bounty Hunter, and Battlefront 2, the era of Star Wars video games, right? Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga. I played that on my DS everywhere I went. It was either that or Fire Red. So the fact that we're now moving into an era where companies besides EA can start creating Star Wars games. And I will say besides EA, because the indication is that EA still has the rights to create Star Wars games. And I'm not completely against that because Jedi Fallen Order 2 needs to happen. This gives us an opportunity to test our luck and see if we can ship Disney some ideas of what we think Star Wars games going forward, what we as the fans may want to see.
I'm going to start off because I'm probably going to be the one that's going to provide the least to this because I am not a huge gamer. I do enjoy gaming. My kids enjoy gaming, so I've done it with them, but I grew up in the 80s, so I grew up in the arcade. I grew up with the full machines in the arcade, Star Wars and otherwise. So those were where I learned to play, but those were a simpler game. When you started getting into things like Mortal Kombat, where you had a combination of 12 moves to get the perfect move off, that's where my fingers and my brain don't work together well. So more recently, definitely Lego Star Wars was a huge one. My 21-year-old son is replaying everything to get through and clear every level recently, so he's begun doing that. So that was a huge one for us. Definitely Force Unleashed. I've enjoyed those. So to try to say what I would want to see in the future, I don't have a lot of relevance to that, so I'm going to add little things here and there, but I would say keeping it simple for me, because not everybody has the dexterity to be able to do those moves. Though I enjoy doing them, I still try to do them with some of the Batman games and stuff against my boys, but I will lose 90% of the time no matter which character I pick, just because my mind doesn't work in the way that's going to allow me to get every move off. So, but keeping it relatively simple with good storylines so that even I can enjoy them. That's I guess that's probably what's kept me away from a lot of the games, is just too much for me to try to figure out. So I'll add in whenever I see here and there, but that's my basic thought.
I have to second that with Andrew. It's like, I'm more the arcade, or I was more the arcade type person. And it's kind of like Andrew, I don't have the brain to finger dexterity either. So it's kind of almost like the PS4, the PS5. Would I venture out to buy it? Would I venture out to buy it? Like, more than likely not. Because of the lack of dexterity.
You
can still get Star Wars Lego though, so you can still get the simple games too.
I think two things I heard though from that too that are things that I hear a lot from Star Wars fans is one, story. We really, and this especially is clear with EA when they stated that people are not invested in single player stories. I think we've proven as Star Wars fans with the hype around Fallen Order and the not so hype around Battlefront 2 because of its lack of development of story. One of the things we really want is good storytelling. And I think the other thing you said, and I think this is really important, both for the older generations, but also for the younger generations, is easily accessible games, right? Because, like I said, when I was a kid, I played Lego Star Wars. I'd still probably play Lego Star Wars. But I don't know if, well, Brent, you could probably speak into this even more because you work with children, like children's ministry. How many of your kids could really get into a game like Jedi Fallen Order or even Battlefront? Right? There's a lot going on in those games. I want kids' Star Wars games.
The kids that I have in Sunday school, I normally teach the older kids. So these are the 4th and 5th graders. And, they love their video games, but they don't talk about Star Wars video games. They will talk about The Mandalorian and they will talk about the movies. but they don't, talk about the video games. They've never played it. And for me, growing up, my first Star Wars video game was at the arcade. I don't think it was the games Andrew, Tom, you were playing, but it was the pod racing Star Wars game, where you actually sit in there and kind of move around and it would vibrate, and you were actually racing. That's where I started. I thought that was pretty cool, because I thought that's what Star Wars games was about. But what I really appreciated about Star Wars video games is that I'm a big RPG. What I really, really want for a Star Wars game is one that's really, doused and entangled with plot and story.
You brought up RPGs. I think it's strange we haven't got a true Star Wars RPG in a very long time. I think a open world, now it's been confirmed Ubisoft is working on a open world Star Wars game. So I think those are definitely big three things I want to see in a Star Wars game: is stealth, melee combat, and open worldness, right? Exploration. I haven't played as much Assassin's Creed, but Far Cry is very much known for its wild animals and its epic encounters, right? Its gunplay, just kind of doing crazy stuff. I know one of my memories from it is riding an elephant and firing a explosive arrowed bow at a special super rhino. And I'm like, okay, that's like about as action epic as you get. And that's how I feel like when I watch Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and so I'm like, bro, we can get like an epic open world Star Wars game with all these cool monsters and animals that are a part of the Star Wars world, all these cool weapons. One of the things I wanted to bring up when it comes to RPGs and open worldness in Star Wars, we need a Star Wars game where you can choose whether or not you want to use a blaster or a lightsaber. I feel like the issue that comes a lot in Star Wars games is you are either a blaster hero or you are a saber hero, and you don't touch the other one. I feel like it's kind of a wasted opportunity, especially if we're going to get an RPG. We should be getting both lightsabers and blasters. And I'm also surprised we've never had the lightsaber forms brought up in a Star Wars game. For those of you guys that aren't as heavy into Legends, or the expanded Star Wars material, there are 7 different lightsaber forms. I'm such a nerd, sorry. That do and are specialized to different things. Like Form 2, which is what Count Dooku uses, is great for anti-lightsaber combat, for parrying and countering. Form 3, which is what Obi-Wan uses, is all about defense. That sounds like a video game to me. The fact that I've never seen that brought up in a video game has kind of saddened me. I was hoping Fallen Order would do it, but I want those things too. 1, that you can use whatever Star Wars weapons you can get your hands on. I'm like, Geonosian blasters, the Trandoshan net rifles. Man, I love watching the Clone Wars and seeing these cool weapons that I've never got to try out because most of them aren't in Star Wars games. And then lightsabers, fighting. Everyone should use a lightsaber differently. And I feel like that's something I haven't seen in a Star Wars game.
So are you thinking you would choose your style that you wanted to use for the game for each play? I mean, what would you see that as then, as far as the lightsaber styles? Would you pick in advance? Would it depend on your moment? Do you have a thought on that?
I feel like you would choose it and then you'd level it up. So if you're a Form 4, so like Yoda, it's all about speed. You'd start getting abilities that go with your lightsaber form that increase your speed, increase how fast you move, and you put level up points into that, right? So you choose from the list which one you want to go into, and then from there you build your character to fit your lightsaber form.
The other question I'd have to your having the ability to go back and forth between lightsabers and blasters, would you be more inclined to just let anybody, be it a Jedi or not, so let's say you're just playing a human character, be able to use these items? Because because they can, because obviously in lore, I mean, I know we're talking about a game here, but we're still talking within the Star Wars universe. Jedi wouldn't use a blaster. You know, they use them only because as a last resort, such an uncivilized weapon. So would you see that as just kind of just not even worry about that kind of thing and just let it be what it is?
I would say the best way to do it, and if I were to do this, I would set it in the post-Clone Wars era, pre-A New Hope era. I think of characters like Kanan Jarrus and my brain is drawing. Ezra Bridger.
Miller.
They use blasters, right? So from Rebels, right? It's kind of an era where the Jedi can't as much be worried about being proper. And if you want to be a proper Jedi like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you could stick to your saber. But if you want to be kind of more of a like, I'm gonna do whatever I need to survive, I'm gonna take in different things. But I would go with kind of the rule of exchange. If you're putting points into blasters and putting points into lightsabers, you're never going to be as good as someone that just fully invests in the blasters or someone that just fully invests in the lightsabers. So it's that exchange of what do you want to be,
right?
Do you want to be really strong in one place, strong in multiple places? Do you want to have all these force abilities? Do you want to tap into the dark side? I think that's the fun thing with RPGs. And I think that's where the game can, like, a Star Wars RPG game can really shine. Because I love watching like Fallout and Skyrim where people make a build. Like they try and be like a paladin or an assassin or something else. And they have to choose how they want to invest that to build that class. I want to watch people play a Star Wars game and go, this is how you build your character to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Mm-hmm. Like this is how you build your character to be Count Dooku. You know what I mean? I feel like that's something I haven't seen in a Star Wars game.
Right.
How was the?
I want to bring up. Oh, you're gonna say something, Brett?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how was the character customization in Fallen Order? Were you able to?
It's very light. You can choose your poncho and you can choose your outfit and you can customize your lightsaber. And there's quite a bit of customization for the lightsaber, but you will have the same lightsaber as everyone else. It will be a double-bladed lightsaber. You can switch into 2 separate lightsabers. Every Fallen Order character will have the same lightsaber. Okay. It just look like in how it works and how it fights. It'll look different, but it will fight the same.
Okay. So it's more like the color changes of the kyber crystal then.
Yeah.
You have a blue or a green or whatever. Okay. Yeah, because that's interesting. Because what I was hearing from you, Ian, is a lot of customization. And the one thing that I was worried about is EA, Electronic Arts, has this very bad reputation of loot boxes, of charging people to customize their characters or their weapons or their items. So because I play a lot of sports games, EA Sports, of course, everyone is pretty much every Madden player is fed up with them, because even though the game, they make quote unquote improvements in the game, it all goes towards their fantasy ultimate teams, where you have to buy characters and buy the athletes, buy these character packs and these character cards. And when I was thinking about Ian, you talking about customization, putting certain like experience points into blasters or lightsabers, or how strong your affinity is with the Force, so on and so forth, health, speed, things like that. I was like, oh man, I don't know why EA hasn't yet tried to monetize, upgrades and, items and, different skills, so on and so forth. But, I'm like, when you were talking about, open world map, stealth, and there was one more thing I was thinking, Assassin's Creed. Syndicate. This is one where you can play, where in the game you switch between a brother and sister. They're both assassins. One of them specializes more in the stealth. One specializes more in like street fights, and if you're like getting surrounded by however so many guards, he's a lot stronger. So but they have different ability trees and skills and different movements, things like that. So if Ubisoft is doing it, I'm just thinking, man, if they end up taking that idea from Assassin's Creed Syndicate, where you can customize your character a little bit more, have different skill trees, different abilities. I can see in your idea about having the 7 different lightsaber stances and forms, in the game, and of course, allocating however so many skill experience points to certain categories. So yeah, it would just bring it, kind of more of an RPG full circle, and I would definitely play that game. Ian, get on it. Start working for Ubisoft. Quit your job at the church.
I would say too,
Just kidding.
One of the beautiful things about Star Wars that I always hear fans talk about this, and I just want to put in my opinion on this. I think the weird lightsabers are cool. I'm like the saber staff, Dooku's saber, like even Kylo Ren's saber, like they're sick. If you look at swords in history, there's like so many kinds of swords. But even that, like getting to custom your lightsaber, choose like, yeah, like I'm a duelist, right? I use Form 2 Makashi, right? And so like my whole thing is if I come against a melee enemy, I can overcome them, right? So I'm gonna use a curved handled lightsaber so that it improves my parry ability. Sorry, just want to add that little point, but like as to what you're saying about EA and the risk that comes with its customization is loot boxes and marketable customization. I would say, and this needs to be the stance of the fans, if a company, because it's not just EA, now we're out of the exclusivity era, if a company tries to push that on us, we need to not buy their game. That's a stance, but because now we have the choice and the voice to say we're not going to take that, because we can choose other Star Wars games. We can still invest in the brand without investing in companies that are trying to take our money. I want to bring up a game style that I have not seen Star Wars do since, I believe, Revenge of the Sith, the video game. And that is, I think we need a Star Wars fighting game. Now, I'm a big fan of fighting games. I love Injustice. I love Marvel vs. Capcom. And I love Fighter Z. And I think Fighter Z is the one that stopped me and made me think, why are we not having a Star Wars fighting game? Because I love Dragon Ball, but Dragon Ball fights tend to go, like every Dragon Ball character tends to have 5 to 6 moves. They have their little blast, a low-key blast, they just kind of spam, and then they have their big Kamehameha Gallic gun attack, and then they just have a couple punches and kicks, but usually they're not very distinct to the character. And I was thinking, I was like, yeah, that's probably what people would say if I said a Star Wars fighting game is like, every Jedi fights the same way. But then again, I was rewatching the Clone Wars and I'm going, no, they don't. Every Jedi has these unique fighting stances. Every character has these unique fighting stances. And I think a Star Wars fighting game could be a really fun new take on the franchise. In game style, it hasn't been done well. And I would do it 2D. I prefer 2D fighting games. And by that, I mean, it's kind of like how I am right now. Not that I'm actually 2D, but that the screen is only in one dimension. So you guys are just kind of 2 people pointing towards each other and fighting. I know games like the new Demon Slayer game and Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe have kind of done that 3D circular. And I think Revenge of the Sith did it too. I feel like the 2D is just allows for so much more opportunity to see the characters' move sets because you limit the amount of space they can move. So you then choose how you want the character to fight a little better. I hope that makes sense. It's a thing with the flat plane fighting games that I think makes them the more long-lasting fighting games. I think it's why Injustice, mainline Mortal Kombat, and Marvel vs. Capcom are just such smooth games. And as for like story, I think we could just replay the classic Star Wars battles in a fighting game franchise style. But I felt like that's one thing I would love to do. But I feel like there's something even cooler I think you can do with a Star Wars fighting game. And I would love to see a Star Wars fighting game where you don't just have the mainline fights of like Obi-Wan versus Maul and Darth Vader versus Luke, but each character has a unique story that is kind of an Elseworlds. So in Star Wars Rebels, and I know I use the expanded universe a lot because I'm a nerd, there's this concept brought up called the world between worlds. I'm not going to get into too much how that affects the mainline Star Wars world, but there's these different portals that show different worlds, right? And not worlds as in planets, but different opportunities of time. I would use these in the fighting game to explain stories we never got to see. So I'm going to just pitch a couple of them real quick. What if Darth Maul had defeated Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan? And get to play that story as Darth Maul, going through, fighting these different characters, being the one to maybe find Jango Fett, fighting a Jedi Count Dooku, right? As you kind of are the Sith Lord that rises up until you're strong enough to challenge Palpatine, fighting through this mini story, right? Building on what we never got to see in Phantom Menace because the story followed this original path. Or maybe a Boba Fett story where you play as Boba Fett, and what if Mace Windu survived? And now you're Boba Fett going around the universe hunting down the Jedi who killed your father and seeking him out. And instead of Obi-Wan protecting Luke, it's Mace Windu. I just pitch these ideas as this is what people already do online. They write these different stories out of Star Wars, but to play a fighting game and I feel like a fighting game has that level of, what's the term? You don't take it fully seriously enough that you can kind of be like, yeah, to just have the term in my name or term in my head, but you release your disbelief, right?
Suspension of belief.
Yeah. Enough to be like, man, this is what I can do. And so I think and I say this too, and I know I'm going to get in trouble because I just said to not support monetization of video games, but I think it is a system that opens itself up for DLC well, and especially exploring non-canon. I think why Fighter Z reminded me of this is Fighter Z has introduced Cooler and Bardock and Broly and these other characters in as DLC, right? So they can keep their main story very like canon easy, right? But these other characters that are from movies or other things, they've introduced as DLC that now players, a lot of players play with Broly or with Cooler. I don't know as much about Bardock. But characters like Revan, I could definitely see making a fun fighting game character. But I think, a fighting game would be kind of a lighthearted way to explore some fun things in the Star Wars universe, and to have a story that doesn't need to take itself as seriously. Not that it should be goofy or over the top, but allows you to explore these different opportunities of the Star Wars world.
Yeah, I agree with you on the DLC. I mean, I wouldn't mind paying for it. It's just, upgrades for, the character changing, their clothing, the color of their clothing, things like that, loot boxes and all that that's associated with it. That doesn't, have anything to do with the story or how you experience gameplay or,
Or feels like parts of the game are explicitly missing.
right.
I definitely understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, but if it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have this this Darth Revan arc, as a DLC, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm down to get that. So I agree with you with that point, Ian. But I would actually, if Star Wars was doing a fighting game, I would actually have it 3D.
Sorry,
Mainly,
can you say that?
oh, if the Star Wars fighting game, I would have it in 3D actually, not 2D. Mainly because I do want to see Yoda jumping around everywhere. you know, I I want to see um, you know uh, Darth Maul's lightsaber be able to to cut in a circular motion, um, and for force users to be able to to throw their opponents not just in a line but like diagonally up down so on and so forth. um and yeah, I mean, just because whenever I think about Star Wars lightsaber fights, I think about the flips. I think about um how they're running around and they're kind of chasing each other to fight, moving into different areas of the battlefield. um I don't want to see it 2D. I mean, and I've played 2D fighting games, you know Street Fighter 2, I'm sorry, being my ultimate favorite fighting game of all time on the Super Nintendo. But I mean, I just want to see it in 3D, kind of like with Dragon Ball Budokai and all that, where you can, where the where Jedi's are they can pivot around, while they're swinging their lightsaber and being able to do flips and just taking advantage of of a bigger area, even though it's a one-on-one fight. So that's just my take on it. Um, I don't know if anyone else would agree with it, but you know,
I've never really played much with the 3D stuff, with the 3D. So I've only played like Injustice, where it is 2D, but you're also dragging stuff in from the behind you. You are in the specialty moves. Obviously, you would see maybe some of those flips or some of those other things that you wouldn't normally be able to do in a 2D. You'd get that only in your specialty moves. So maybe that's a way of looking at it, where it gets a little bit. But I understand what you're trying to say with trying to be able. There is such fluidity in a Jedi move that maybe 2D is not enough, but I don't know. Again, for me, it goes back to simplicity. So if I had a third dimension to worry about, yeah, I'm already looking at 2 dimensions and I'm like, okay, maybe, but put that third one in there where I'm trying to move around and I'll watch. I'll watch my boys beat each other up.
I think where the 2D comes into advantage is with like juggling. So juggling is a term in fighting where it's like you get in that combo and you're using the momentum of them not hitting the ground to keep your combo going forward. It's a lot harder to do in 3D fighting games. And so I think something like Injustice, I think, brings up a good point of how to do that well, because the characters kind of move on a plane, right? They have a split plane they like move on, and they feel like they're not trapped, even though they technically are. So I think getting that right balance of animation and those big character moments, I think kind of like you brought up Injustice's super moves. I think a force meter or a fuel meter for certain characters, where they can like build up more force energy. I think meter burning was one of the funnest things that Injustice introduced. I think it might have been Mortal Kombat, but I'm kind of not up to date on the history of fighting games. But getting to use a meter to using energy to make your move stronger. But I think too, like, man, the Star Wars characters have such cool moves. I don't know why. The first thing I think of is Palpatine's little spin he does. And I just want to spin attack into a combo. I want to like spin, strike him up in the air, like hit them with the Force lightning, and then like
Gas fingers.
stagger them, and then go for a low, medium, high, and then bounce them across the ring to end it. And yeah, I think I thought there was another thing that was about it. Oh yeah, I think too, with the idea that every character has a story, it makes DLC a lot more acceptable. Because every time you introduce a DLC character, you'll have to introduce with them a story. That feels like their own, so obviously if you're going with the main game is the main Star Wars content, so the movies, start with that. The first DLC is probably going to be Ahsoka Tano, because who's not going to want to play as Ahsoka Tano? You introduce Ahsoka Tano with her own story. And you get to see Ahsoka Tano's story, and I think skins is an important thing too, having different skins you can have your character look like. For example, if I want to play as old Ben Kenobi, or if I want to play as Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi, getting to see those. And even, again, I would go back to have fun with this. What if you want to be Imperial Kenobi? Like, what if he became a Sith Lord and joined the Empire? I feel like this is where you can have a lot of fun with a fighting game, is not just the fluid gameplay and the easy accessibility that fighting games have. Like, you don't need to know anything. You could just throw two people in a room with a fighting game, and they're going to just, even if they don't know Star Wars, someone's going to look at it and go, General Grievous looks cool. I'm going to choose General Grievous. And someone's going to be like, I don't know, I'm going to choose Qui-Gon Jinn because he looks like Jesus. And I'm just going to throw these two against each other, and they're just going to have fun, right? I mean, as a youth leader, one of the things that was always super cool is we had up in our youth space, we had an Xbox and we had Injustice. And just all the kids would come out and we'd have big old Injustice tournaments to see who would come out on top. And this is actually the reason why I cosplay Deathstroke, because no one could beat my Deathstroke in Injustice unless they spammed Aquaman.
I hate Aquaman. My son takes Aquaman and I can't do anything about it.
Aquaman is the spam king of Injustice. But that's what I really want to get out of a Star Wars game, is I want to sit upstairs and just watch my kids choose their favorite character and just go at it, and then be like, okay, you lost, switch controllers, right? And then, oh, I got the next game. The accessibility of a fighting game is just, it's not, I don't think any other video game has that level. Like any other genre of video game has that, where you can literally just have a group full of people and they'll just pick up and go, right? There's obviously a learning curve, right? And you have the difference in professionalism, but I feel like it's just so accessible of a genre.
In terms of switching, you end up losing, you pass on the controller. Shooting games, you can't even do that. You respond, you respawn so quickly. No, but I do like the that idea you were talking about, Andrew, kind of using that Injustice style for it, that 2D, but then having, the three elements in terms of the special moves, in terms of special type cutscenes, switching camera angles here and there, depending on, if a player gets blasted out of a building, or, or punch down and now they're in a sewer or something, or underground subways, train station.
I would definitely go for having stage transitions be part of a Star Wars video game. Like what I think of is Mustafar. Everyone's gonna at least at one point do the Obi-Wan versus Anakin fight with their best friend, and there needs to be a stage transition where you can launch them on from the like big platform with the lava spurts coming up behind them onto like the sandy bank and do the "It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground." Everyone would be doing that. I feel like it also has a great opportunity for maps. One of the first maps I think of for some reason is Palpatine's office, doing the Mace Windu fight, and you like fight, and then if you guys collide, the windows behind you just shatter out. Just Star Wars is such a beautiful atmosphere, and it's so much of it is so easily recognizable from like you just look at it and you know where it is in Star Wars. I think just having those maps that you just go to and you're like, okay, this is my map, this is my character, right? Let's play. And let me just throw out one last, and I think we'll start to wrap it up. One last game idea. I don't think we've gotten this since Republic Commandos, but it's definitely Battlefront definitely gets close, but a true warlike experience, bringing the wars back into Star Wars. So I think the first thing that always comes to my mind is doing the Clone Wars. But I think where you could really do a good first-person shooter Star Wars game is from the Imperial perspective. I don't think we've got Battlefront 2 started with an Imperial perspective and quickly shifts out of it. And I believe Squadrons also has a partially Imperial perspective. But you know what? I'm going to go even further. I think we need a sequel trilogy era Star Wars video game. And I know that's going to be kind of controversial because if you guys all know, I'm not the biggest fan of the sequel trilogies, but I will say what the sequel trilogies need is a Clone Wars, right? Is a Star Wars Bounty Hunter, is a Republic Commando. What made the prequel trilogy so loved by people like me and Brent and people that grew up in the era was like, there was the movies, but there's also the TV shows and the video games. I don't believe we've actually gotten a true video game set in the timeline of the sequel trilogy. I think maybe getting a first-person shooter that's set in that time period and gives us some perspective on new planets that we didn't really get to see, and some planets that were very big in the sequel trilogy may make it feel more grounded. Give you more of the boots on the ground experience that I was really hoping we'd get was Finn. So I think a first-person shooter video game set in the sequel trilogy could be a really great way to expand and humanize that era of Star Wars that's right now not very well fleshed out. Brent, quick question. Did you play Republic Commandos, Pod Racers, or Bounty Hunter?
Pod Racers.
Okay.
That's the one I played. I didn't. Yeah, it was mainly that game.
That game's fire. I started replaying that again. But I think going back to the point I was making is, I think part of the issue a lot of people have with the sequel trilogy is it's not fleshed out. And I think it's what makes the Clone Wars, it's what makes the prequel trilogy a lot more loved now is the fact that it's a fleshed out series. And then there's a lot more issues with the sequel trilogies, as a whole, but I think beginning to set stuff in that era that starts to answer questions and make the world feel a lot less tacked on will help a lot of Star Wars fans slowly come, maybe not to love it, and definitely not in the same regard as the original trilogy, and maybe not even the prequel trilogy, but see it as Star Wars. I think the lack of content in that area doesn't help Disney's Star Wars trilogy.
Man, I don't know if I can play any of any games based off the sequels, off of 7, 8, or 7, 8, 9. I don't know if I'll be able to. I don't know if I can stomach
I
it.
know it's a matter of finding the unique characters that they haven't fleshed out yet that are people are going to care about, and that's what Ian's talking about, is finding something that people are going to fall in love with, and it's going to give them a connection to those, and it's a matter of that one character that really didn't get much time on the movie, maybe, but like Boba Fett, we nobody really thought that character would be anything, but he turned out to be something that everybody loves. Well, you need to find the next one of those possibly in those sequels. And I don't know who it is. I mean, just trying to sit here and think of everybody that's in the sequels, I can't pick that out, but I get what he's saying by you find something for them to love that's specific to the sequels, and then they'll be more willing to accept the sequels. Not love them, like he said, not love them, but accept them more than they are now. Because now you have something vested, because now you want to see that character. So I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Well, maybe we can message if we think of who that is, what that storyline is. That might be interesting.
And I think too, going back, and I use the prequels as the example for this, Jango Fett in Star Wars Bounty Hunter, Anakin Skywalker in the Pod Racer game, because everyone played as Anakin Skywalker, we all know. And it made you like little Annie a little bit more. Jango Fett made you like Attack of the Clones that little bit more. The 501st Troopers made you like, from Battlefront 2, made you like Revenge of the Sith that little bit more. Yeah, like you said, finding those characters that, maybe it's Phasma, right? Phasma was wasted. Like, maybe it's Finn when he was just effing, or another trooper, right? Maybe it's that trooper that dies at the beginning of Force Awakens. That'd be my vote. You get to play as him, you get invested in that character, you watch Force Awakens. Though I think his backstory has already been fleshed out in the comic book, as if Disney's really cared about the books they've written lately. Needless to say, I think video games can definitely be an open to making people accept that trilogy more. Sweet. So we brought up some ideas of what we think, or what we'd love to see in Star Wars: story modes, RPGs, fighting games, improving an unloved trilogy, and making simple but fun games. I don't care about next-gen graphics. I care about how fun it is to play with my friends. And I think that should be the core of Star Wars games. Do you have fun playing it with your friends? Or do you have fun playing it by yourself if it's a solo RPG or a solo story, right? Do you have fun talking about the story? So I think that's just our 2 cents. I'm going to go ahead and pray us out. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for our ability to love you and express our passion. Lord, I thank you that you take care of and love us, that you create things in us that connect us. Lord, I pray that this week we'd be safe and happy. Lord, that we'd seek you more and more. Lord, I pray for our brother Alex as he takes a plane trip to go speak your word. Lord, I pray that the words upon his lips would be yours. Lord, that you'd impact the people there in mighty ways, and that lives would be changed. Lord, and through that, the world would be changed. Lord, I pray for everyone on this call, for everyone that's listening via Facebook. Lord, I pray that they have a wonderful day. They feel safe and happy. Lord, I pray for the future of Star Wars, that it'd be fun, and that those moments we have with our youth, with our friends, with our students and our teachers, Lord, that we have around these video games, Lord, that they would be the moments that remind us how much we care for each other. Through that care, we lead others well. Through my name we pray. Amen.